Don't you love that moment when it all quiets down? It's just beautiful. Yeah, and I'm hearing from the front row, no, this is now when we get terrified. Good evening, I'm Gus Leonard, and in my lucky artist-adjacent life, I also happen to be the husband of the director and founder of Open Ground Studios. And I've been actually able to witness and participate in the creative juices that are marinating in the studio space, and they flavor our community at large. And I'm delighted that all of you tonight can share in the spotlight hosted and experience part of the creativity and growth that's been going on for over 10 years in our Seaside Studios. And for me, you know, I'm not the artist, okay? They give me a microphone sometimes, but I'm not the artist. And so it's really just been amazing to watch these transformations. Artists will stick, or people from the street will stick their heads in, and somehow 3 years later they come out and they've decided on a career shift that's going to keep art at the center of their lives. And we find others who just find a respite from, I think, who find respite in making and doing and being with art, and it allows them to survive their day-to-day. So it's really a privilege to be part of this and watching so closely. I'm really honored. Thanks. So it is wonderful to be here at the Sunset Cultural Center in the Marjorie Evans Gallery. Can you believe it? Yeah. It's not just an art show and installation, it's actually a full showcase of the arts. So on behalf of the artists, I want to share my appreciations for the staff and the team who have made this happen. Open Ground Studio artists really appreciate and understand the work that goes into keeping a cultural center vital in the center of vital to the center of the artistic health of the community. Maybe you do the fundraising, maybe you curated the show, maybe you installed the show, cleaned the floors, poured the wine, who knows? But we are just so grateful for that. And a special thanks to Raleigh Weaver for hanging the show. Thank you, Raleigh. Paul Fellow with a beard. And Alana Thompson-Klein for her generous guidance and support. Thank you. There she is. You know, and I'm so lucky. I feel like I'm surrounded by friends. I want to thank you, the audience, for joining us here this evening. We're honored to have you here to share in this continuation of the art making. This time from the stage, because most of the art, and one of the artists pointed this out, most of their work is normally away from the people. So tonight, to get to make art in time with the people is really a lovely moment that they're excited about. And I also really want to say a double thank you to the families, spouses, children, parents, siblings, and I know how you benefit and how much you sacrifice in having an artist in your lives. And I really know and how much time was kind of stolen from you during December and January to get the show together. It was a lot of work, but the excellence is here and we get to enjoy it, both out in the gallery as well as in here tonight. So, before we get into the art of the moment, I want to introduce someone to tell you about the genesis and the role a studio can play in the creative life of an artist. Please join me in welcoming the founder and director of Open Ground Studios, Denise Sanders.
Thank you, my beloved. He stole almost everything I was going to say. So thank you. So it is really great to see the sea of people here in this room, many of whom I know and I've worked with, and many I don't know. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of what Open Ground Studios is. We are a 2,000 square foot space in Seaside on Fremont Boulevard, and we have dedicated studios, about 10 of them, and they're small. And we have a large room that we use as a classroom on Monday night, as well as a space for all of our artists to grow into. And I say that with a huge heart, because this exhibition that we have outside is really a testament to how one can explore their creative voices in every way, and tonight is part of that voice. And a lot of times when people walk into the studio, they're surprised at how small these little spaces are, but see how big the work is out there? Everything in this show has been made in the past 6 months, and it's all been made at Open Ground Studios. And it's all been made next to each other, either in a vibe, in presence, or in spirit. And I want to thank Marjorie Evans Gallery for actually accepting our proposal to do this group exhibition, because it was about 8 months ago or 9 months ago. And since 2020, we've suffered. We've had it was tenuous for a little while. And in 2021 and 2022, slowly people started coming back, but they weren't the people who started the studio, and they weren't the people who built the studio from the ground up. And so we kind of had no culture in there. It was everyone who walked through the front door was a stranger until they became a friend. And when you do something together with the same goals and the same excitement, you grow together and you become more. And I think that is the real beauty and power of Open Ground Studios, is that it is a shared space, and it was designed deliberately for art making. We have 3 sinks. And if you're a visual artist, that is no small thing. So this evening, I'm super nervous, just for myself. But we decided in the process of all of our meetings about what this show was going to be and how our work was going to either weave together or not together. We also really recognized a very important part of art, which is the creative process. And anyone who's an artist, whether they're a singer or an actor or a visual artist or a dancer, that creative spirit starts somewhere in here, and it comes out in whatever instrument they choose for it to come out in. And oftentimes we cross over into that other instrument because this one isn't quite enough to give voice to this one. And so of the 9 artists out here, there are 8 represented tonight to share with you the other creative aspect that drives them, that encourages them, that inspires them, and helps them grow. So the other thing I want to practice is, this is a moment in time. Thank you.
For that moment in time, our first presenter is Diane Danvers Simmons, who can't be here tonight. But we can kick it off listening to her voice with an excerpt from her memoir, My Mother Next Door.
Well, hello, and this is Diane. I'm not there in person right now, but the essence of my creative spirit is in my art, in the gallery, in my memoir that I'm going to be sharing with you today. It's in my voice. They're all interwoven. And in fact, it was writing this book that actually heightened my creative spirit. It brought me back to my creative core. So right now, I'm going to share part of the intro, which will give you a sense of what this story is all about. Author's introduction for My Mother Next Door. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. James Baldwin. This is the story I never intended to tell, but was destined to. When I was 16, I solemnly vowed never to do unto my own future children what my mother had done unto me. My very own motherly version of the golden rule. I mean, how could she? But then, decades later, when my daughter turned 16 and I found myself standing in my mother's shoes, I realized 3 things. Firstly, that sometimes a vow can be so deeply ingrained that it tests our limits, or it can even paralyze us. Secondly, that there were some parallels in our lives. And finally, that seeing the humour and absurdity in life with a chilled glass of rosé in the summertime or a hot toddy in winter is really the only way to survive. In her youth, my mother escaped the boundaries of her beloved island and family expectations to seek her future fortune in Britain. Just as I too headed further west and left Britain for the US in my 20s. Though, I have to say, my exodus was as much to get away from mother shenanigans. Then, in middle age, she escaped the boundaries of home and parenthood to reclaim her independence. And now I too felt as if something inside of me was missing, and I had to find a way to reclaim my true self, explore my next chapter, and spread my wings again, without throwing my children out of the nest in the process. So standing at this crossroads in my life, unable to decide whether to stay, go, or attend another self-help pilgrimage in my latest yoga gear, my entire being teetered on a precipice. I knew I could not pass on the same pain I'd experienced at my daughter's age, or destroy all the good years I'd invested in my American family. It wasn't until I was on an adventure in Morocco, attempting to reconnect with my daughter and heal the turmoil that burned within her from my own marital fallout and her first year at college, that I was taken aback by some disagreeably wise words from the most unexpected of channelers. A German lady named Lisa and her Turkish husband, Erhan, told me, "You need to forgive your mother, and you need to break the pattern for your daughter and future generations." What? We might have just shared a delightful day of tea, stories, and even an evening meal with a glass of rosé together in Rio de Rosé. But they barely knew me, for crying out loud. After another Swiss glass of rosé to stop myself from actually crying out loud, followed by fervent denials, insisting that I'd forgiven her years before, actually never blamed her, and had let go of those memories so long ago, I realised maybe they had a point. So, finally, in my quest for resolution, I re-inhabited the child of the British 1970s that I was, and ventured out on my own version of Monty Python's Holy Grail, though happily without any French knights telling me my mother was an hamster and my father smelt of elderberries after farting in my general direction. It really became a long journey of rediscovering parts of myself and my youth that had been buried, the truths that make up the character of the woman I had become. It was about recognizing the patterns, the triggers that I didn't even consider or maybe hoped weren't there, and continuing to make the choice to react differently and find the silver linings. This journey didn't take me even further west, but instead it took me right back home to my roots and to the irreverent comedy that kept me sane in the madness. And, most importantly, to the people who had been my fellow travellers in those early years. Thank you.
What a treat we can be here and not be here. It's lovely. Thank you, Diane. I do want to note that if you have a program handy, there is an indication of where each artist's art is actually installed in the show outside. So if you're curious and want to draw that connection between the person who's presenting and what's going on the walls for them, it's in your programs, okay? So next up, I'd like to invite Eva Boynton, who's going to share a glimpse into her creative process with... One more time, it's Eva Boynton with Sketchbook Poetry, an inside peek at the relationship between process and tension.
Great. How's that sound? Bad? All right, I'm gonna shake out for a second. All right, today I'll be reading Sketchbook Poetry, a combination of poetry I've written to help me process my journey in creativity and sketchbook entries that reveal me in the moment of making. But first, a little about me. My sketchbooks are about figuring things out. Like, what the heck is happening? Get this idea down quick. How do I do this? How do I feel about that? I do a lot of writing. Actually, I'd say my sketchbooks are 50-50 drawings and writing. The writing can look like hurried scribbles, spontaneous ideas rushing out of me, or carefully written letters from thoughtful and slow wondering. Scattered among the pages of my sketchbooks are definitions, words that draw my attention. I love to Google words. It can inspire poetry, sketches, and a stream of thought. And since my relationship to art and art making has always included some type of tension, I couldn't wait to Google it. Tension. 1, the state of being stretched tight. 2, inner striving, unrest, or imbalance. 3, balance, maintained between opposing forces or elements. I often find that I myself am my own opposing forces, stretched between a sea of thought and emotion. And that act of making is a sort of give and take, tension, necessary tension and release between my inner self and the blank page in front of me. Often there is tension of when to keep on keeping on and when enough is enough. Sometimes I walk away too late, leaving something overworked, and other times I flee too soon, afraid to apply the finishing touches. I find my best work, the work that feels like a mirror on the wall and satisfies a longing to make, is when I have left enough room to witness the process between tension and relief. And when it fits, there is a balance in the imbalance, the tension itself holding an interesting stability. The crisp and crumbly charcoal, smeared in some places and erased in others. Big negative space enveloping the depth and folds of figures I've drawn. I find that there is a softness in listening and being tuned in to the tensions. Okay, here we go, some sketchbook poetry. All right. For making in the meantime. I made bad art today to get to the good. I made mark over mark trying to get somewhere new, losing a shade of freshness with every new hue. Messy scribbles and half-hearted strokes, failed imagination, blocked by spatial limitation. My mind sent words to the wall, and alas, they did not stick. Eager to use their momentum, they bounced off and flew back in exactly my direction. I tried to duck, but the letters returned too soon. With nowhere to go, they went smack. Juggling my brain and tightening my heart, tossing my pencil to the ground, shuffling my clarity, I'm back at the start. So limited, so utterly stuck. Trial 1, 2, 3, 10, 15, 50, just stop. Soak in the failure, drift in the blur, for making in the meantime can stop. Rest. Take a breath. Pause and look at the mess. Release the pressure of time behind your eyes. Allow for burnt inspiration to rekindle and slowly grow from somewhere wise. Find relief in this new pace. Choose an evening of simple and calm space. And declare this quiet contemplation as essential as the making. Thank you.
I'm glad I don't really have to follow that. Next up, reading from a couple of her, and I just found out the number is actually 28, not 27 in the notes that were given to me. 28 of her published children's books with a narrative entitled, For God's Sake, Don't Write Poetry, is Carol Diggory Shields.
Hello. I am a have to do that. I've always loved picture books. To me, a picture book is like walking through a gallery with somebody telling you a great story at the same time. And so when I became a children's librarian, I felt like it was in picture book paradise. And after years of reading books, buying books, just being surrounded by books, I thought, I want to write one of these. So I started putzing around, sending things out, and it wasn't until I hit 39 that I thought, I'm going to be 40. I need to put up or shut up and do this. So I joined a writing group, I joined the Society of Children's Book Writers, I started seriously sending things out. And 5 years later, I had probably 100 rejections. And actually, I wrote an article about rejection called The 5 Stages of Rejection. And that was published. So that became published in the Writers Magazine. Anyhow, I kept on going. After a while, I met an agent who was interested in my stuff. She sent it out. And finally, after all that time, my first book, I Am Really a Princess, was published. And that was followed by, a few years later, by I Wish My Brother Was a Dog, which is a line I stole directly from a kid in the library. Anyhow, one morning I was thinking about the kids' lunch. Did I have enough bread or sandwich makings? Were they going to want hot lunch? These things you worry about as a mom at 5 in the morning. And all of a sudden a poem popped into my head. And it went, don't ask Dad, he never has any. Grandma's purse has a quarter and a penny. Checked all our pockets, nothing but thumb. Piggy bank, here I come. And it was like I turned on a faucet. I just couldn't stop writing these poems about school. And I was kind of surrounded because my husband was a kindergarten teacher, my kids were in school, my mother was a teacher. And so I just kind of kept getting all these ideas from the kids all over the place. Excuse me. Anyhow, I finally told my agent what I was doing. And she said, for God's sake, do not write poetry. She said, no editor wants to read it, no publisher wants to publish it. So, taking her advice as the expert, I couldn't stop. And they just kept coming, and eventually I kind of snuck around behind her back and talked to my editor. And eventually she decided to give it a chance. And so finally, my first poetry book, Lunch Money and Other Stories, was published. I don't know if my agent was pissed or not, but anyhow, that was followed by another poetry book called Almost Late to School. And that was followed by another poetry book, After the Bell Rings, which was then followed by Someone Used My Toothbrush. And in short, the moral of the story is, do not listen to the experts. I'd like to read a couple. And this one is directly inspired by my son Alex. We spent many hours hovering over Alex while he was doing his homework. I'm doing my homework, and I have found if I bite my pencil all around, it makes an interesting pattern of holes that help my pencil not to roll. I'm doing my homework, and I've discovered if I cross my eyes at my math book cover, the letters all smush and kind of float, and it looks like something a Martian wrote. I'm doing my homework, and I have found I can make a lot of different sounds by hitting my pen on the side of my bed, or my teeth, or my chair, or at the top of my head. I'm doing my homework. Some kids think it's dumb, but I think homework is kind of fun. The assignments are sometimes boring, it's true, but somehow I always learn something new. This one. That's right one. And this is from after the bell rings. Oh, I should give credit to Paul Mizell, is the illustrator who did a lot of my books, and I've never met the man. He lives in Maine, but we've done a lot of books together, and I love his books. Really capture the kidness. And this is called Homework, number 4. I need a science project for school, an experiment that is really cool, something that will awe and surprise. Maybe I'll win a Nobel Prize. A project with wires and buzzers and bells, or bubbling beakers with horrible smells. A title that will make me look like Einstein, and when I can finish by bedtime at 9. A lot of my school experiences, and this is about sitting in the classroom looking at the outdoors. Outside, inside. Outside, the sky is cracking, the leaves are snapping, the flag is slapping. Inside, we are coloring maps. Outside, the wires are strumming and the air is humming. A storm is coming. Inside, we are doing the states. Outside, I would shout into the wind. I would twirl, dance, and spin, feel the rain against my skin. Inside, I am making Michigan blue.
Right? This is that inner side that Denise was talking about. It's so amazing and wonderful to get a glimpse of everything that's going on. And let's get another glimpse of someone offering a vibrant insight into life lessons from trail running. We'd like to invite the puntabulous Bernadette Renoir.
Full disclosure, I need my notes first. Oh, I made it, just in time. Yes, I'm Bernadette, and yes, I am an exhibiting artist. Why this bizarre attire, you're wondering? Yeah. Well, this is a variety artist showcase, and I thought tonight I'm bringing the variety. So, this is what I wear when I do hard things. It's the gear I wear when I trail run, which brings us to our topic, life lessons from trail running. So, next question. How does trail running fit at an artist variety showcase? Logging many hours on my feet in nature is how I practice life. Trail running is a portal to my creative self. It is a safe way to take risks, make mistakes, set goals, and challenge my mindset. All necessary skills to being a bold artist. And I am an artist. That felt good. I also am an ultra runner. Having completed my first 50K, it's a little over 31 miles last March, and I am currently preparing to double that distance and hopefully run 100K later this year, with my grand ambition being a 100-mile race someday. So for tonight, my hope is to share a few too many running puns with you, blame that on my dad. I inherited his humor. He's not here, so I can say that. And offer you some unsolicited insight into what I've learned as a trail runner. How about a running joke? Do you know the real definition of ultramarathon? It's the running sport for slowpokes. It's not my calling. Okay, really, let's start. But one moment while I set my watch, because that's what runners do at the start line. First, I would like to share a profound self-realization. It turns out I'm not a tardy person because I like being late. I'm late because I like running late. Thank you. Okay, and that's running pun number 1 if you're counting. Now that we're warmed up, let's take a stroll over here to my book of life lessons. It's only 600 pages, so we're in for a short run. All right, lesson 1, quite appropriately, is start with what you know. For example, to build a 4-foot by 8-foot precipice, like the one hanging out in the hallway, you start by going to Home Depot. To run a 100-mile race, or insert your grand aspiration here, you start where your feet are. Lesson 2, I can do hard things. And here's why. I have vision, I plan well, and then I consistently show up and do the hard work. The next lesson I want to share is one I value most, and that is suffer well. As human beings, we have each suffered from feelings of grief, pain, fear, sadness. Trail running teaches me how to suffer well through these discomforts. Sometimes we get a choice in how we endure. Suffer well. Now, I think I have one more lesson to share, but I'm going to check my book here to jog my memory. Yes, this one's my favorite. This actually is not full of lessons. It's actually one of my art books, if you're wondering, because I'm an artist. Yes, so this last one, it is my favorite, and that is know when to rest. It turns out recovery is just as important as the work. Now, to get us to the finish line, let's recap what's in my soul. One more pun. Trail running is my grand slam. It helps me mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. It's my fast track to gratitude, joy, and awe. I wonder what you have in your life that empowers you. What are you ready to start? It seems that I'm running out of time, so I'll end with this. Sometimes all you have to do is put one foot in front of the other. It's been a good run. Thanks for seeing me to the finish line.
You've earned a good rest. Thank you very much. So next up, we are delighted to introduce someone here from the Marjorie Evans Gallery to read a selection from Anne Ilvesocker's award-winning youth novel Little Klein, in which a dog adopts a boy. Please welcome Alana Klein-Thompson.
Anne Ilvesocker had always wanted a dog, but circumstances never allowed. One day, Several years ago, while struggling to write her second novel, a dog named Leroy galloped onto the page and became her first canine companion. Years later, Anne finally did get a real dog. Buster appears in 2 of her paintings now on view in the Marjorie Evans Gallery show. Tonight, I'll introduce you to Anne's first dog, the fictional Leroy, and her novel, Little Climb. That was a coincidence that our names are the same. Leroy lived for smelling socks, crotches, squirrel paths, dead fish. In his dreams, his nose led him from one adventure to another. It was with this glorious snout that Leroy chose his family. Leroy had been a wanderer, a dog who spent his nights outside the corner bar with the other wanderers, surviving on the generosity of the grill cook at closing time. He liked his routine, tracing the changing town smells, alley by alley, tree by tree. Early mornings were for the town, padding past houses as lights turned on. Midday in the cool shade by the river, afternoon smelling his way back. People hadn't smelled much, only the storekeepers who left him scraps and the drunks leaving the bar at closing. Then one day, Leroy's nap by the river was interrupted by an intoxicatingly sweet sound. He lifted his head up abruptly, and a spindly boy tripped and landed smack on him. Leroy rose up, the boy fell off, and the dog stuck his nose in a nest of long hair. This boy smelled of leaves and grass and rabbit and river and eggs and feet. He was a feast, but he moved fast. Soon, 3 enormous versions of the small one grabbed Leroy's scented boy and took him away, leaving behind a splendid bouquet of all of Leroy's favorite smells. He yapped, he howled, he chased his tail. Then Leroy put his nose to the ground and followed the pack. "Get!" the biggest one yelled when he saw him catching up. "Get on, you!" Leroy barked the most furious bark, hoping to impress. The littler boy whistled before being shushed. Leroy bared his teeth to show what a fine specimen he was, but the big boys ignored him. Their backs did not insult Leroy. "Put me down," hollered his boy. Leroy lagged behind while following the pungent trail out of the woods, across the bank parking lot, past Liberty Corner Restaurant, stopping not for the fine aroma of cooking cow meat, under the railroad bridge, without a glance at the yapping ball of fur in Nels Nelson's yard. He followed the pack until they walked through the back door of a house and closed it on his nose. His long-haired boy tried to come back out to get him. "Get away from the door," said their leader, picking up the little one like he was the weightless front of the litter. "I want to keep him," said his boy, but the big one kept talking. "Mark and Luke, get rid of the dog before Ma gets home." "Why us?" whined one. "I go to work on my bike," muttered the other. "I want to keep him," his boy continued to plead. "No dogs. Dad's rule, and he'll be back in 3 weeks. Now just do it." When the door opened and the little one popped out, Leroy had hope, but before he could get a sniff or a lick, his boy was snatched away by the leader again. "Beat it," he yelled, and Leroy scampered into the alley. He hid between garages until streetlights came on and the house lights went out, and then he crept back to the house. All night, Leroy lay by their step, hoping for another whiff, ear cocked for another call. His stomach rumbled, he barked, but not even the "shut up and scram you" shouted out a window or the ensuing silence moved him from his spot. After moon rose and trash cans scavenging raccoons woke Leroy, he toured the fenceless yard behind the house. Weeds, rabbits, worms, raccoons, squirrel, but no dog. Faint whiffs, of course, faint but passing. This yard was home to no dog. Leroy stretched. He pranced a few circles after his tail. He took a winding sniff around and around and around the house, and he knew this was the end of wandering. Not since his puppy days had Leroy felt the urge to add a family to his life. But once the notion hit him, Leroy accepted it without question. Leroy lifted his leg on the apple tree. He went back to the dirt next to the step, where the smells of frog and ripe shoe mingled like a lullaby, and Leroy slept. Thank you. Anne has a new novel coming out in May called One Alley Summer, a coming-of-age story featuring a very different dog character named Bull.
What a treat. Our next presenter comes to her work from a place of mindfulness, and she's going to share some of the poetry that was part of a body of work that began during Shelter in Place in 2020. I'd like to invite Therese Garcia on up.
Amid the morning sun, the ocean crashes strong. Beauty, but no beauty inside. Rather something else, the void. Depthless, weightless, and especially like a tree and a shooting star of wisdom inside. That is the 9-month stay inside a cave. That is the door slammed in your face. Those are the rocks, the sand, the voices of the wind, and branches bending down to bathe the nest with love. A way to start a sentence about my life when the room isn't visible and the letters of inescapable sadness are. Travels in unlikely places to reduction. Thee. A way to confuse me when the rake gets put to the side and the lonely leaves come together like the sand in the ocean, wandering farther and farther away from the automatic routines and closer to my heart. A way to give me the pureness of a basket of nothingness, like the 10,000 deaths I've gone through, culminating into the illusion of perfection, stumbling into the vortex and dropping fear down to a friend in the depths of me, since the time of energy. Going slow, like when I folded my hands and broke down in the disbelief. And my brother and mom said my sister was dead while the rain poured down, while the empty and sterile hospital room bore isolation, stacked on top of more of the same. At 15 years old, at no years old, at nowhere. A place that lasted for decades until it crumbled. Going slow, like the enveloping smell of mint on the mountainsides that guided my reflection of depression through the ultimate understanding of conflict. Oneness. A place that lives in this moment. going slow, like the tarantula in the dead of the heat, in the middle of the desert, in the vastness of scarce life, where influence originates from the natural elements and awakens something within me, which feels as though stillness is a supernatural teacher on a dirt trail, emptying the shopping carts of terrorism, of domination, of madness. An addendum to the powerlessness of the invention of money. The chaos at work is a resistance to recognize the chaos isn't really real. Only the habit to work in chaos and believe this is us. Whispered in my own fatigue, stress, and loss of self, as loudly and profoundly as the ocean's moving roar. Like shedding skin only to find that it was despair, that composted into inner light, not having any moments that fears fear. Opened my apologies for hating myself because of what I learned and passing that on. Not because of who I am. Who I am is kindness. Who, my seen and unseen. Sisters, brothers, fathers, mothers around the planet and life are related to pure, living, dying, transforming, transcending energies, transcending angels, stretching, not knowing, to dance effortlessly into understanding a forceless and wide open space. Walking, standing still. Walking, landing lightly, like a dream that isn't. Reflects something I've seen countless times, but for the first time today. Nay, but a Canada goose, skimming along the entire surface of a small lake, egoless and strong, with graceful speed, the kind that knowingly leaves imagination in the atmosphere like the presence of a rainbow, taking its movement to a level of wholeness, like a spacious freedom, both from nature in the fall.
Thank you, Therese. She's getting hugs back there. It's getting nice. Our next artist is going to connect us to the origin of her artwork with Why I Support the Senegal Health Institute, a love story. Please welcome Jenny Webster.
Hello. 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 I'm Jenny. My piece is called Why I Support the Senegal Health Institute, a love story. Have you ever fallen in love? Have you ever fallen in love with someone or something that doesn't really love you back? Have you ever pursued someone or something to the other side of the world because you were that much in love? Have you ever given a relationship your mind, body, and soul, even though you knew that relationship would never be complete? I was in my 20s in San Francisco when I fell in love with traditional African dance. I heard the drums, I danced those barefoot steps, and I moved my body in ways that white women almost never do. Though the dance never truly loved me in a way that I love it, it did change my life. I took every class I could find and dragged my young children to Africa, just so I could practice with the master teachers. When I was in Africa, I also fell in love with the culture, the language, and the vibrant cloth. I went back to the same village every year for the next 15 years. Though I was in love, I was also aware of the hardships that people, especially women, face in rural Africa. I tried several projects to help support women in my village. I'm known in some circles as the bag lady because I would buy bags made by African women and sell them at farmers markets and African dance festivals here in California. I could tell you 100 stories about people in my village who I came to love and how often my heart broke when they were sick or injured. The clinic in the village had one doctor. He was a drunk with only a high school education. The nearest hospital is a very bumpy dirt road ride for 2 hours when it's not the rainy season. Fast forward to today. I'm still in love with traditional African dance, and I'm still working towards supporting rural African women. All of the cloth patches on my upcycled jeans art here in the gallery are salvaged from African tailors. When a tailor makes clothes, they always have extra cloth. And I have several people who bring me cloth from Senegal, Congo, Guinea, and Mali. When I sell art or decorated clothes, I donate my profits to the Senegal Health Institute. The Senegal Health Institute is in rural Senegal in West Africa, near the village I danced and lived in for 15 years. The institute is run by a licensed American midwife who is also my good friend. At their clinic, they help women to have safe births. They teach the young girls about reproductive health, and they feed malnourished children. All this happens in an area where the average woman has less than a third grade education. Maybe the dance will never love me completely, but my love for African dance and African people continues. If you'd like to know more about the Senegal Health Institute, I have cards that have a QR code. It can take you directly to the website. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. We can't help but love that. So, and more hugging, it's great. So, last but not least, I've got an Energizer Bunny to welcome back to the front to share an essay about how her voice is rising. It's called Finding My Life Force Through Song, and she might even sing for us. So please welcome Denise Sanders.
Is this okay? I learned to play guitar when I was 11 years old with my sisters. During high school, I was in choir, I ran track, I took acting classes, and began writing songs and playing guitar during basement parties in Wisconsin. I was that 70s show. In college, I majored in art as it was an obvious choice given that I grew up under the influence of my father, the political cartoonist. I had no idea how an art degree would make an income, but I knew I had to follow my joy rather than a paycheck. I planted art in the center of my life and with determination that it was my life's purpose. In my 30s, I finally gave up waitressing and got my master's degree and began teaching. In my 40s, it was all about raising children, volunteering, working, and making art. In my 50s, I was building open ground studios, which eventually gave me the courage to release my identity of being a printmaker to following my dream to becoming a painter. 4 days after my 59th birthday, I headed to Stanford for an MRI at the exact same time that our nation's capital was under siege during the raging pandemic. My heartache went from global crisis to national to personal when I learned I likely had ovarian cancer that had spread throughout my abdomen. Since that moment, an individual timeline seems to be threaded through my very existence. 2 weeks later, I had a 12-inch incision, followed by a 9-hour abdominal surgery, which left my weight at 86 pounds, and my body in a metamorphosis of epic proportion. Gratitude for love, family, art, and community became my elixir, and my art was the muse that propelled me back to wellness. After more than 18 months of recovery, rehabilitation, and making a lot of art, I was far from feeling whole in my body. But my heart was overflowing with a renewed love for life. During my daily dog walks, I would be dancing down the streets, listening to my big songs and trying to sing along. But my voice was long gone. Even having a brief conversations with people drained my energy to the point where I had to stop after 10 minutes. I was a warrior without her voice. Until I had a transcendent moment. I was indulging in one of my guilty pleasures, which is watching America's Got Talent, very good, singing auditions, while working out on our rowing machine. A kid walks onto the stage and tells their story, and I'm immediately curious and charmed by their presence. And I'm rowing, and I'm breathing. And the song begins, and I'm instantly transfixed by their voice and the words coming out of their mouth. And I am rowing. And all of a sudden, my abdomen muscles start to contract and siege and spasm. And it's a shocking sensation, which has me nervous and excited. And I realize my core is coming back to life. And I keep rowing harder, and the kid keeps belting out this amazing song, and I can almost see this body instrument of expression moving from their core, powering up through their body, through their vocal cords, out their mouth, and into the world, and crashing into my heart. And I am rowing, and I am crying, and this kid is singing, and the audience is going wild. And in that moment, I knew if I could bring my voice back, I would reclaim my life force. And that meant I needed to learn how to sing. So during these past 8 months of voice lessons with the amazing Norma Mayer, I've been moved to tears with wonder of my own body's ability and capacity to grow and heal from the inside out. And I am certain that it is never, ever too late to learn something new, and that even in the darkest of moments, light can be found when we lean into our joy. This is by Jerry and the Peacemakers from 1945. When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high, and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm, there's a golden sky, and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on, walk on, with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You
We actually have an out. That's the showcase. So, come on up, artists. We actually we held a little time for artists for you to do a Q&A. If you've got questions of the artists, their work out in the hallway, or sorry, not the hallway, the gallery, excuse me. Here, what they presented. Questions anywhere? Anyone? Curious? What'd you get thinking about? Yeah.
It was a challenge to step into this kind of a vocalization from sitting in front of physical art that you do. Because I mean, when I found out what this show was going to be, I was really moved by it, that you're used to being visual artists or physical artists to some degree, and then to take that and say, well, our art is out there, but we're going to take it to a different place by sharing that in a verbal way. I'm not sure where the question is in there, but I think
The answer is yes.
Even though I would say a lot of the stuff we're doing too is weaved into the work. Like for me, writing is part of the art, but performing it in front of people is very weird.
Does anyone else have a question, comment, concern?
I'd like to I just want to say thank you to all of you. This is really, really powerful, and you're all just inspirations, and I love that each of you is so genuine in what it is you do, and each of you brought such a different experience, and I did thank you. What a wonderful experience. Thank you.
I'm curious about the process that you used in coming up with each of your individual pieces. Did you do that very independently, or did you workshop it as a group?
Well, for me, it was different. I write poetry, so actually it's not that it's not connected to my process art that you see out there, but I'm also a writer of poetry, so mine was different that way. So anybody who writes poetry, it's definitely not the reason why I'm doing the work out there, but it is a creative process. So the creative process is my link, it's my thread. Poetry is one thread, and visual art's another thread. They are intertwined, but the process for me writing my poetry is very different than my art making.
Well, it's all, it's kind of the idea of the faucet being turned on, you know, it's, whatever is fun to do, challenge to do, you know, whether it's writing or singing, making art. Yeah, it's something that's fun and something you kind of can't live without.
Well, I think when we, got the show, we had a couple meetings about the show. It was, we got to know each other a lot during those 2.5 hours brainstorming about, okay, we've got a show, and we've got to have writing that describes the show. What do we got? What are you doing, Bernadette? What are you doing? And then when we decided to do a showcase, that was like, well, let's get the show done first, and then we'll worry about it. But we had deadlines, lots of deadlines. And I think that organically, everyone knew what they would do if they said yes to doing this. We never said, we think you should do this thing. It was obvious kind of what we were interested in. We did have a rehearsal last week so that we could do it. And my lovely husband provided the PA system so we could hold one of these. And I guess I just would like to say, artists in general are courageous humans. Just to allow themselves to find that personal expression and put it out into the world no matter what they're doing. And to do it in our voices is another step of courage, which, was hard. And very exciting, and we all had to trust each other and have faith that we would show up with our best selves.
I agree with all that, and I just think I don't think I would be doing this unless it was this group. So I think it's one of the reasons that like it's allowing me to show art, to be up here, is because all these amazing people are working together in the studio, checking on each other, like how's it going? What are you up to? Help me! You know, all that stuff is going on all the time, and I feel like if we didn't have that bond, I don't know if I would be here. And with that support and those deadlines and all those things, really, there's a lot of reasons not to do it. So this group gave me a lot of reasons to also do it.
Yeah, definitely with the support of this group is how I was able to do this, because at first I said, no, I'm not going to do this. But then I realized I had something to say, so I did it.
Okay, now I feel like I have to say something. My 2 cents I'll add is that I've had the privilege of observing each of these women make their pieces that are hanging in the gallery. And I think what felt important about doing this showcase is that all of us are creative in a lot of different ways, and that felt necessary. If we're going to show up and give you a glimpse of the visual art we make, it also made sense to show up and be creative in the other ways. Yeah.
There's another question over there.
Yeah, just an observation. Your ladies, it's wonderful to have you, but what is it? Is it a sisterhood that brings you together? Is there, I know there's men that were involved in Open Ground Studio, but here I see 6 female artists represented.
Where are the men? I would like to ask that question openly. We are accepting of all genders, race, culture.
No, my question is that, do you feel that you're supporting each other more so than men would support each other? Men tend to be maybe more individualistic. Do you? No, you don't?
Well, I'm going to answer this question just simply because I've been in the studio the longest, and I have been a teacher and educator in art and at MPC and at CSUMB and in Minnesota. And for my whole 40 years of art life in that world, 90% of the people who show up are women. And I think, this is just my own little philosophy, I think that it is courageous to learn something new, and I think women tend to have to learn something new a lot, and they want to learn things, and I think women do tend to support each other in that process, maybe just by nature, maybe not, I don't really know, but you know, I think there might be a bigger edge of fear for men to jump into that learning stage of not necessarily knowing if they're going to be any good at it or not, and I don't know, but why is it that most classes that I've ever taught are 90% women? I mean, and it's not because I'm the teacher, they don't know who I am before they show up, but the studio has, and then I'm going to answer the other, I do, this group of women and the other people who are in the studio who are not in this show have been very supportive of what we're doing, and together, I just am so inspired by the things these people said here, and so you can imagine what they also say there. So I'm a better artist because of that, and I think that is a pretty shared sentiment.
We need more of you in government.
Stacy? Denise.
Oh, by the way, Stacy's one who came in and all of a sudden found this artist that was on fire and has gone on to a lot of stuff. You're actually who I was thinking about.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, please, if anyone needs to know how Open Ground works, I'm happy to sing their praises. For you, Denise, in looking at your paintings for several years now, there's been an introspection to them, and granted, much of it was due to your cancer recovery and all that. And tonight, and when I've heard you sing, just in the last month or so, now it's this outpouring that I feel anyway. But for you as a visual artist and a singer, do you turn on a different switch when you're singing versus when you're painting, which I don't see you when you're painting, I'm seeing the finished product, but the creative process behind the painting versus the song. I don't know what the question is really.
I don't really consider myself a singer.
You are.
I used to have, when I was 18, I so wanted to be a rock star. Heck yeah. And back in those days, in college I played guitar and continued singing, but nobody really cared. And if you don't have an audience, it's kind of, it gets boring. But I'd still sing, and play guitar. And it was always a choice between, honestly, for me, making art and dive into that, or diving into playing guitar and writing songs and singing. And so I did find when I was actively doing both back in the olden days that I did kind of have to have a choice. I'm such a different person now, and this is why I never was formally trained in voice, and because I lost so much of my voice through that whole treatment, I knew, like, if I'm gonna ever find that, I need coaching to tell me how to use this instrument. And it is an art form in and of itself to heal and to be in that present moment with your own body and to understand how it works. And I learned so much about my body through all of the things I've been through. And my paintings are exploring the emotional wholeness of being in one's body and being in the moment of that moment, at every moment, right? And so for me to take this microphone and do this thing here was about allowing me to do that in this moment. But all I want to do is go learn from Norma, and I'm singing like 4 songs. So I can learn how to do them well, and at the same time learn how to use it. I don't know if that answered the question. Thank you for saying my name like that. Very exciting. Well, if there are no other questions, I just do want to thank everybody here and my beautiful husband for being such a great MC. And the courage, yeah, and the encouragement. We've got another 15 minutes to drink wine and mingle and see the show, so please help yourself. Oh, yes, this is my mama.
I'm Denise's mother. I have 4 daughters. Denise is the youngest one. This is my second daughter. And when Denise was going through all of her treatment and all of this, we dubbed her the warrior woman. And I just want to say, you are all warrior women. And I'm just so proud of all of you. I mean, it's so varied of what you're doing. But you're warriors, and I have a prejudice against women. I love women. But you're all warrior women, and it just you inspire people like me, and Denise has just changed my life too with the process that she's been through. So thank you all. This has been the most incredible.
So mingle, here's wine. The artist want to talk to you.
Really cool. Yeah.
Man, I'm so glad.
Oh, it's whatever. I'm okay. And then you go to stuff like, I'm good.
I really want to see you do something about that. Is that
I beat so taco and yeah, enjoy it. I mean, great food and